We're discussing supply chain, resilience down the chain, which is a major issue nowadays. And we have with us Dr. Heinrich Berger, who is the VP for raw materials at ICL, based in Amsterdam. Hello, Heinrich.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure on my side. It's really great to have the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. Yes, ICL, as you probably know, is very well recognized in Israel and is one of the largest companies, obviously in potash and other products as well. You have a major role of taking care of the supply chain. And we know that in recent years, expectations of many stakeholders is that companies would not only take care of their own sustainability performance, but also will make sure that all along the chain, sustainability is also looked after. One of the initiatives that you're part of, you're leading for ICL, is Together for Sustainability, an initiative that's bringing together quite a substantial number of companies working with their suppliers. So could you please share us a bit about this initiative and how it works?
Yes, thank you for inviting me again. And as I said, yes, sustainability for ICL is very important, and we think it will be even more important in the future. As sustainability is something which is important for all the people in the world. From a procurement point, we looked into that and we saw that it's an important part where we also need to contribute to the company's result.
And it's, if I understand correctly, one of the essence of the program is that basically you ask suppliers to fill in CSR, sustainability reports. What's the response? What's the uptake once you ask the suppliers to join in and fill out the questionnaire?
Yeah, Momo, just allow me to give me an overview first. So TFS is a consortium of 29 big chemical companies. It combines 550 billion in turnover, or about 365 billion in spend, and it creates basically a standard on how supplier assessments should be done. There is a big advantage for that also for suppliers, because there is this notion of one assessment for all. So if you do this kind of assessment as supplier, this assessment will be accepted then also by 29 other companies. So it will open you, in principle, a big market.
And that definitely answers one of the major problems that I think a lot of companies complain about, that there are numerous questionnaires, each one asking something a bit different. So here the thing is kind of unified, and as you've said, it opens up a market. The questionnaire itself, who sort of conducts it, or what is it based on? I think it's ECO Vadis, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so the consortia works with an outside assessment company, ECO Vadis, together. And ECO Vadis has about 350 professionals around the world who do nothing else than assessments. This has a big advantage that it's standardized, it's a global standard, and you can also use it then to compare companies to each other. And we did the assessment internally in ICL, how we want to do. We saw that several sites had questionnaires, but the questionnaires were very different. So we could not even consolidate and compare them to each other. Now, with the global standard, we can really compare also companies with the different assessments. And for that, we can better engage then also the suppliers. And as said before, the supplier has the advantage that he can do one and he can use it for all 29 companies.
Excellent. And what's the usual, I mean, what are the responses that you've got from suppliers this past year? Do they see it as a burden, or is it something that, as you've said, opens up a market, or even improves their internal processes? What was the typical reaction?
Look, it's well, sustainability is a sum of a lot of small actions, no? And in a company, everyone, every business, every function need to add to this action, and that's also part, like the procurement, add to this action. And if it comes to the daily life, it's not easy because you need to convince your suppliers, you need to work on that. But the feedback which we are getting is growing and is getting better. After 2 years, ICL has about 440 valid assessments. So these are party assessments which are done by our own and party assessments which came from our consortia companies. And as we speak, we have about 100 additional companies which are in the process to do that. And together, this gives a coverage of about 60% of our ICL spend today.
That's quite impressive. 60% is definitely a considerable number. And I understand that in Israel, with suppliers, it was a bit difficult. I would imagine that we know that it's somewhat less common and recognized in Israel to fill sort of CSR questionnaire, especially if you're mid-size. So what were the reactions, if any, in Israel?
Yeah, I would say in the common understanding, Europe is maybe a little bit more leading in this, also in the population understanding of sustainability and Green Deal and so on. And there we see in Israel that they're a little bit behind, but the function is growing and also the attention is growing. We did a little bit of different approach there. So we did several also engagement calls and where we brought suppliers together, and we also gave explanations in Hebrew to better engage the suppliers into the program, and also supported or coached them a little bit on how they can do their own assessments so that the assessment per se is going to be easier for them to be done. And we have good success. So we started with 0. Now we have brought in already 30 companies with an assessment, and we have another 40 to 50 companies which are in the progress to work for the assessment. So we see a growing attention, and of course we will further work on that so that we increase also the intention and the use of the ECO Vadis assessment also in Israel.
That sounds good, and I absolutely agree that it's a process and it needs engagement and definitely some I would say encouragement and help at the initial steps. What are the goals? What could we expect in terms of suppliers? If you now have 60%, what's the typical rate of advance in this regard of covering additional suppliers?
So it's 60% of the spend. Our dream would be to have 80% of the spend, but of course, if you go higher, then you need more suppliers to add on in order to convince. And of course, first you have the more easier ones, which you have already in your system. But that would be our dream. Maybe I can also give an overview for ICL. So today we have about 440 suppliers in our program. And as a company, we also, as a member of TFS, we also need to do an own ECO Vadis assessment. And we have done this assessment and have also a good score because this is what is required in this assessment. And we also share our own ICL assessment 54 times with customers of ICL. So it works on both sides. It works on the supplier side, but it also works on the customer side for ICL.
And I would imagine that, it's a powerful way of convincing others to join once you've done it yourself and show that you can actually do it. As we're wrapping up, I think that no discussion nowadays could be without mentioning COVID. From your point of view of the supply chain, and of course of moving forward with this initiative, were there any setbacks? Were there actually some maybe opportunities to use? What do you see from your end?
Yes, so sustainability management has also to do with risk management. And here we saw that our suppliers actually took care very early for their employees, and with that also somehow secured their deliveries. There were a few items which were, we had to work on the supply chain to make sure we got the material, but in principle, we got a lot of materials from our suppliers, and we were very happy that it worked out. On the other hand, ICL is in the essential segments in most of our businesses, and therefore also the supplier could profit that our businesses went on and did not really have been impacted too much by COVID.
That's definitely reassuring to know. Good. So the TFS is definitely something that I think to look for. And ECO Vadis, I think some in Israel already know. They're also approaching other businesses directly as well. Heinrich, thank you very much for being with us and sharing the work that you're doing. It's definitely a very important role to make sure that all the chain is actually aligned with sustainability.
Yeah, Momo, the thank is on my side. I really think that with TFS, we do, together with the 29 companies, a big impact to the sustainability of the world. As I said before, sustainability is the sum of a lot of small actions. And if we do this all together, we will have a much bigger impact than if everyone does it by its own. So thank you very much for inviting me and having this discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And more in ICL you could find with Ro'i and also with the CEO Raviv. Thank you.